Once long ago, before the white man came to America, near the shores of the southern lands, a girl was gathering herbs and roots for her mother while her brothers were out hunting for the tribe's dinner for that night. The air was heavy and thick as it usually was in that region. Evening was approaching soon and she knew that she must start heading back because the worst hunters came out after the sun went down over the sky's edge. Then suddenly she noticed, as it should have been getting darker, instead it was getting brighter. So she looked up to see why, and above her she saw that the sun had fallen from out the sky and was like a flaming tinder of fire with a smoke trail streaking behind it stretched from one end of the sky all the way to it. The most surprising of all was that it was shrieking like that of 1,000 birds screaming all at once. So loud she had to cover her ears before she thought she would never hear again. She dropped down and curled into a ball as the flaming sun flew over her so close she could feel the heat upon her skin, and with a thunderous thud and a flurry of trees and dirt the ball of fire crashed into the side of a small mountain, reducing it to but a small hill. As she got up and brushed herself off, she noticed that the flaming sun was moving, and it was no sun, but a very large bird. Screeching in pain, the girl also noticed that the bird had broken one of its wings. She felt pity for the poor bird and wanted to help, but the size of it had scared her so bad her feet wouldn't move. Then she could distinctly hear a voice. It could talk, but the voice wasn't coming from the bird but from all around her. The voice spoke and said, "Girl, what are you staring at? Come and help me." The girl tried to reply, but the bird could not understand her, but he did understand the fact that she understood him. "Wait, you can hear me? Why can't I hear you? Okay, let's try simple objects and shapes." So the bird began drawing shapes within the dirt with its beak. It managed to tell her that it was injured and needed certain plants gathered that it could use to heal itself with, but then the people from her tribe appeared and, fearful for her life, took the girl away, shooing and hitting the bird with sticks and branches. The girl cried out that it wasn't a mean bird, but no one would listen to her. After dinner that night, the village elders met and discussed whether the bird was a sign of good things or an omen upon them, and the little girl saved her dinner and snuck off to go see her new friend. She appeared and told him to stay silent and fed him what she had, and he was grateful. They had left 2 men to stand guard in case any night animals came to try and make a meal out of him. The next day the village sent a group to put the bird on a cart and bring him to the village to help him heal. They were not sure if he was an omen, but they were sure that he would make a powerful ally if they could successfully help him heal enough to fly again. They built a large flat padded area and kept the bird tied down with his wings spread out so that the bones in his wings would mend right, and they fed the bird fruits and berries they would gather from the forest. After a few weeks they took the ropes off the bird's wings and backed up. They were afraid at first, and so was the bird, not knowing what to make of it. The bird stood up and shook itself off. It tried to stretch its wings out but felt the cramp of the freshly mended bones, and it knew it could not yet take flight. So it decided to nest on top of the place where they would gather to meet and discuss matters. Despite these people and their primitive habits, they had helped it during its time of need, so now it decided it would return the favor. The little girl came to try and understand what was going on, but it was clear to the other villagers that the large bird had decided to become their protector as it stood perched with its chest beaming outward. Now that it was regaining its health and looking more healthy, they could see more noticeable markings and had never seen any such bird like it. Its feathers were like that of no other pattern seen before, and it did not have the head of any hawk or eagle but like a combination of the two, and its eyes were like that of a swirling spark of red and orange glowing embers. As the girl got closer, she could hear the voice of the bird again beckoning her to come closer so that he could tell her his story of who he was and how he ended up here. She told this to the elders, and they told her to be careful but to go ahead. She stepped forward and the bird told her to sit down in front of him. She did, and the bird touched his forehead against hers, and suddenly there was a flash all around here as they were soaring through space as she rode on the back of the bird, who was again engulfed in flames, but it did not seem to harm him this time. There were no stars in the sky except for a dim flash of light faintly shining in the distance as the bird said, "Pay close attention." And suddenly a bright shining burst of light erupted from a distance, followed by a rolling wave of thunder so loud it could have torn her right off the bird's back easily, but somehow she remained safely on. That was the very beginning of all things. "Now look," the bird said, and from the center of the explosion she saw two streaking objects flying across space. It was two birds, one of them was him and the other was like him but surrounded by lightning, and it streaked behind him as they shot across the skies and stars flying with them. Then a sudden flash as they were suddenly at the bottom of a great mountain with a sea of stars below them. There in the sky above them was a city of gold that was connected to the mountain by a bridge at the top. "What is that?" she asked. "That is the mountain of creation, and that is the dark shade. Watch closely." There were altogether 9 birds along with him that had surrounded this shadow-like bird that looked more like a monster causing chaos as they prepared to pike it down with their spears. Suddenly from the east there was a giant ball of fire and a huge mountain came falling from the skies, and one side of it was on fire. It smashed through the golden city, leaving only a piece of the bridge that was embedded within the mountain top left as the rest of the city went crashing into the ocean below. The dark shades went crashing into the mountain lands to the north, and 7 of the 9 birds were scattered to the northeast as the Firebird and the Thunderbird were scattered to the northwest, and the falling mountain of fire fell far to the southwest. "What was that?" the little girl asked as she watched her friend plummet towards the forest where they first met. "I don't know. I hope to find out one day." Another flash and they were sitting in front of the villagers, who all sat waiting eagerly to hear what the bird had revealed.
Now, this next part may shock some of you. I have been poring through the images and maps of the ancient world and decided to take a look at the old outline maps of the Old Kingdom outline of the city of Jerusalem, and there, as plain as day, is unmistakably the kingdom that once stood where I served the Lord, who had given the order to flood the earth, to whom I threw down my sword and denounced my allegiance to heaven, who I was then, ran through from behind. I can even walk through this step by step. I approach from this direction through the gates of iron, into the great hall. There stood God, looking over his model of the earth. He may have called it an ocularium, but it could be best described for our understanding to be like a 3D holographic interactive contoured train map and strategic command center. Something you might find on your basic battle class star cruiser. At least the interplanetary models, not the intergalactic models. Those require a much more in-depth 5D holosphere projection screen for charting multiple targets across various systems. Yay. Promotion upgrade. Charging. He told me that the world was filled with wickedness, and that mankind had turned their hearts from him and had praised other gods in place of him. That he knew we had children with the mortal women, and that they were abominations to creation that must be destroyed. He then showed me through the ocularium the most disappointing moment of the Rasheen lineage's entire history. Out of all that they would achieve and do, the time of King Henry and his sons, King Richard, Prince John, and the other 2 who ravaged the English countryside along with the rest of their family. Before them in their feud for conquest, while squeezing everything they could from the surrounding people to fuel their war, all in the name of God and country and whatever else they could claim to forsake. While it always pitted upon plans and schemes with foreign kings to betray their own father for the rule of his own kingdom. It was the highest, most offensive moment in God's eyes out of the entire Rasheen history. The one that drew the line and caused God to finally say enough and decided to label them abominations and wipe them out rather than allow them to cause his creation such suffering. However, I still stand by my decision. Even though he is the creator and his responsibility has certain duties that must be done, I am an angel made by his hand, and I have responsibilities as well that I will not forsake. He made me to protect them from harm. He's gone through great lengths chastising me to make sure I understood that even when I wasn't at fault at times. So, on this issue, Like Abel would often say to Cain, I'm not like you. I'm a good son. Meaning, I will adhere to my design this time rather than take the risk of being deceived by someone's command. God commanded me to kill the Rashim, but they were innocent children being condemned for deeds they would not even commit. He told me it was because they possessed the authority of an angel and the free will of man. But that wasn't it. The real reason was obvious. I can see that now. He condemned them for the outcome of the Rashim lineage of the Plantagenets. Regardless, he had his reasons, I'm sure. Whatever they were, I could not deny the feeling within my heart that told me what I must do. You all know the rest, but it was here in this central hole right here is where it happened.